Cold cases, missing persons, unsolved crimes. This is a Monday Night Mystery with Mitch McCoy.
Hello and good evening. Thank you for joining us. Friends are missing right now on this edition of Monday Night Mystery. We are talking about Shequenia Burnett's case tonight in a part one of our part two series. She disappeared in January of 2014. Her leg was found in the Arkansas River nearly 2 years ago. Tonight, where is the 38-year-old mother of three? And we are on the case, and we aren't just broadcasting live on KARK.com. We're broadcasting from the new Studio B here in downtown Little Rock. Feel free to ask the panel questions as we begin our show tonight. I want to get straight to the panel. We have Latricia Woodruff, a police communications expert, on the upper left-hand corner. We have Kelly Ward, a former Pulaski County prosecutor, and we have Cara Boyd, a former prosecutor turned defense attorney. All thank you for joining us tonight as we begin this Monday Night Mystery, part one of our two-part series. And we begin with Latricia Woodruff. Latricia, catch us up on this case. This is an interesting one.
Very interesting one, and such a mystery. As you stated, 38-year-old Shequenia Burnett went missing back in January of 2014, and almost 2 years later, her leg was found in the Arkansas River near Rebsamen Park, near the Murray Lock and Dam. It was found on December 4th, 2015, and I think about December 11th, 2015, the Arkansas Crime Lab positively identified that leg as belonging to Miss Burnett. This is a case out of North Little Rock, and it's been, 6 years now, and no real leads on this case, no leads that will help us at this point or have helped them figure out exactly what happened to this 38-year-old mother of three. So we're talking about it tonight, hoping that people are watching and we can drum up some information on exactly what happened to her. We don't know if this was foul play involved or if somehow she died from other causes. So we're going to talk about this one. We're also, as you mentioned, going to talk about one of her best friends who also went missing pretty close to the time that Miss Burnett went missing as well.
Yeah, there are so many twists and turns with this. I want to welcome folks in who are just joining us tonight, and I want to bring that hashtag up. It's Monday Night Mystery. You can leave a question or a comment on the Facebook Live channel. You just use that hashtag Monday Night Mystery, and we will bring you in to our conversation. I want to begin with Kelly Ward, a former Pulaski County prosecutor. Kelly, thank you for joining us tonight. What's your take out of this? And I know we're in a part one of part two special here, but you know, let's just focus in on this case here. There are some very serious concerns with this. Her leg was found nearly 2 years later. What do you make out of all this?
Well, it's just a tragedy, Mitch, and what a strange story. She was reported missing by family members in January of 2014, and then nothing was found of her until almost 2 years later in 2015, and her leg was recovered from the Arkansas River near the Lock and Dam. It's very strange set of facts. And then, you know, I know we'll talk about it next week, but add into that a friend of hers went missing almost the exact same day. I mean, maybe a day or two apart, depending on if you line up when the family members and the friends last saw them. And there were reports I've seen from North Little Rock Police that the two had talked to each other around that day, and the January 9th and 10th, and that they had had conversations. And then now neither one of them have been seen since 2014. So I know law enforcement is still working the cases. They're still open cases. We need more information for them to go on. We need this show and talking about this to drum up tips. We need people who know something about what happened to Ms. Burnett to come forward.
And in the set of circumstances, I mean, we've talked time and time again about missing people, and it's worth noting here that we are going to be talking about missing persons cases throughout the month of May. Part one is, of course, Shequenia Burnett tonight, a 38-year-old mother of 3, reported missing in January 2014. Her leg was found in December of 2015. Latricia Woodruff, a law enforcement and communications expert, you know, law enforcement, this is suspicious. There's no question about it.
It is very suspicious, but again, not knowing exactly what she was doing before this and all the calls she made and the people she'd been in contact with, it's pretty hard to say. But what they'll be looking for is, again, the people that she knew, if she was involved with anyone who could possibly cause her harm or anyone who wanted to harm her, what kind of lifestyle she led, if she was the type of person who left and was gone for long stretches of time, and things like that they're going to be looking into. But to find just her leg in that body of water makes it really, really suspicious in nature. So they're really gonna have to work really hard on this one, unless people come forward and start talking and telling the story about seeing her in the days before or that day, the last day that she was seen, and giving information on that. If people don't come forward, this is going to be a pretty hard one to solve.
Again, Shequenia Burnett found, her leg was found in the Arkansas River. And just for clarification here, I want to make sure people know, because it's so critical when we're talking about a missing persons case, that we get the dates and times accurate, we get them correct. She was reported missing January 2014, right, Latricia?
Yes.
Her leg was found December 2015.
Yes, almost 2 years later.
Almost 2 years later, her leg is found, and it took the Arkansas State Crime Lab to confirm the DNA, right?
Yes, they confirmed that her leg was found on, I believe, December 4th, and on December 11th of 2015 is when they came back and said that the DNA led back to Ms. Burnett. So just a few days in between finding her leg and figuring out exactly who this was, excuse me.
And you know what? I'm watching our Facebook Live right now, and her sister is watching. The comment, please, if anybody knows anything about the case, please call in a tip. And that's why we do this show every
And that's
Monday.
gotta be hard for their family. It's always hard when a loved one is missing, and even when you find out that they've passed away by finding their body, but they only found her leg. So I can't even imagine what they're going through, wondering what happened to her and why, you know, she wasn't intact, so to speak, when they found her. So my heart really goes out to this family.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you're right. I can't imagine either the pain that they're going through and the confusion of just all of this. I mean, no family deserves this, and nobody deserves whatever happened to Miss Burnett. Nobody deserves that. I want to turn to CARA Boyd, former prosecutor turned defense attorney. CARA, thanks for joining us. Walk me through what we know about just the set of circumstances regarding the fact that they found a leg. Do you think that the crime lab was able to gather any evidence? I mean, for it to be there nearly 2 years, what are your thoughts?
I'm sure they were able to gather something from how that limb was dismembered. I mean, that obviously was intentionally done. I'm sure that by the tissue and some of the bone, maybe they could determine how that dismemberment occurred. But, you know, obviously floating in a river over who knows how long causes some things to be washed away, some evidence to be, you know, destroyed and contaminated. However, I do think that we have some amazing analysts and specialists that can test and examine the remnants of that body part to determine how it was removed, whether it was caused by some kind of physical force, something that some instrument impact, something that would have caused that dismemberment. I think there's all types of forensic specialists that can test and examine and reconfigure possibly what could be the cause. But obviously you've got that contamination issue from the you know, months and months of being possibly in submerged in water and washed away. So, but I definitely think that is a great piece of evidence to determine that this is foul play to some extent. It has to be. Nobody intentionally, you know, gets their leg cut off. So somebody did it. So somehow that was caused by something. And so I definitely think that can lead to, you know, this case to be treated as a homicide as opposed to any other cause of death.
A missing persons investigation. CARA Boyd, defense attorney, former prosecutor, saying that there's no doubt about it. This is likely a homicide. I want to welcome folks in who are just joining us here on KARK.com, Fox16.com, across all of our digital platforms. We're talking about Shequenia Burnett, a 38-year-old mother of three who was reported missing in January 2014, and her leg was found in December of 2015. And I want to get a question out there, and then after we get this question, I want to circle back to what CARA was just talking about. Yeah. But let's first bring this question up. Kelsey is wondering, using the hashtag Monday Night Mystery, could you look at both of their old phone records and look at a number they were both contacting around that time? It's obvious that someone, it's obviously someone who they both knew. I want to maybe go to Kelly Ward, a former Pulaski County prosecutor. Kelly, I'm hoping that's what North Little Rock has already done. North Little Rock's a very professional agency. That's almost Police 101 when we're talking about the year 2014.
Sure. They would go get the phone. Well, it sounds, and they have received the phone records and they've looked at them, they've compared them. And what they'll do is they'll go back to the day that they were missing or maybe a few days before. And they'll start determining who they were talking to. They'll go through each number, whether it be, you know, voice calls or text, contact that person, interview them, and create a timeline. This is, you know, who's the last person to talk to them? What were they talking about? Did they say, you know, I plan on going out of town? Did they say, well, I'm going to meet someone, or we're going to meet together? I'm going to meet Terkisa and we're going to go meet someone else. I'm sure likely they have compared those records and have talked to those witnesses to get all the information possible to determine what they did in those last days before Ms. Burnett disappeared. That would sorry, I was going to say that would be essential to any investigation, whether it be a missing person or a homicide.
Yeah, good information, Kelly Ward, former Pulaski County prosecutor. So I want to go back to what CARA was talking about. And by the way, folks who are just tuning into us, you can use the hashtag Monday Night Mystery. I'm bringing it up for you right there on Facebook, and you can interact with anyone on the panel, and we can get your questions answered, and you can be a part of our conversation tonight. I want to go back to what CARA said. And CARA said that at this point, the leg would be sent to the Arkansas State Crime Lab. Latricia or Kelly, whoever wants to answer this, would the State Crime Lab be able to determine even nearly 2 years, and we're guessing that the leg had been in the water for the full 2 years, would they be able to determine how that leg was cut off? And again, Latricia, Kelly, whoever you want to talk with.
Well, Mitch, we talked a little bit about her leg being in the water, excuse me. And honestly, we can't say that it was definitely in the water for 2 years.
Exactly. That's the point I was just making. Yeah.
When it came to be in the water, and if it's been in the water that long, like CARA said, we have some smart analysts who can probably figure this out. But it could have been severed because of animal activity. She's in water. It could have happened that way. They could probably tell if it happened that way or if it was cut off by someone, or how it was, it came to be, her leg came to be in the water, and we don't find the rest of her body. So we can't necessarily say that she was in the water for 2 years. They could probably tell that she'd been in there a long time by looking at her limb, but that's not something that we know right now. Something could have happened to her, and she could have been held captive. I'm just talking here, and then came to be in the water, or she very well could have been in the water the entire time. But one would start wondering, what happened to the rest of her body? If someone did something to her, did they put a limb here and the rest of her body there? Or was her body intact when it went into that water, and some sort of animal activity? Those are some things that I'm sure the analysts have been looking at and probably know at this point. We just don't have this information. So there are so many avenues that you can go down in talking about this. But if there are people out there who have spoke to her in the days leading up, anybody that has any information on her, it will be very helpful for them to call, so that all of this can be woven together to figure out what happened to her, if she met with foul play, or if something else happened to her.
Kelly Ward, do you want to pick up on that? I mean, the State Crime Lab is very, very advanced.
Yes, so they would be able to look at the leg and possibly be able to tell, not an exact, but approximation to how long it had been in the water. Was there, like Latricia said, animal or predation, which meant, it could change the condition of it, and they would be able to say, or was there other evidence that they were able to gather? Were there wounds that they could say, oh, this is definitely inflicted by, a human, like a gunshot wound, or was there a bullet? That's just things, we don't know that. I'm just kind of hypothesizing. Those are things that they're going to be looking for. And Cara's right as far as forensic evidence, not necessarily cause of death evidence, but forensic evidence as DNA, fibers, things like that. They're going to be really hard pressed to find anything because of water. That's going to wash away a lot of that type of evidence. But I'm sure the medical examiners, did a thorough investigation and came up with as much as they could from what they had.
I want to go to some Facebook comments here, and they're not specifically using the hashtag Monday Night Mystery, but they're asking about when some of the forensic reports will be available. I want to go to Cara Boyd. Cara is a former prosecutor turned defense attorney. That information will likely not be released, right?
Correct. Typically, those reports remain in the confidential until the investigation is closed and the case goes to a prosecutor or is reviewed for further investigation. If the law enforcement find a suspect and then that evidence is being used, obviously those reports would be provided to opposing counsel or that representative that represents that suspect. But typically those reports are not a matter of public record until the case is closed and the investigation has concluded. So no, unfortunately, the public won't get to inspect that unless the case is closed and it's determined maybe not to be foul play and no suspect involved. And I think some things may be subject to FOIA once the investigation concludes, but while that case is open, members of the public, it's not subject to any FOIA-able search.
We are on the case tonight. Shequenia Burnett is missing. Her leg was found in the Arkansas River nearly 2 years after she was reported missing. And I want to get to a comment, and they're not using the hashtag Monday Night Mystery, but again, folks, you can join in on our conversation. We can bring your comment in by using that hashtag Monday Night Mystery here on Facebook Live. A question here would be about fingerprints. Would the crime lab be able to find any fingerprints even if the limb was in the water, the leg was in the water? Is that possible? Do we know? Kelly Ward, you prosecuted numerous major crimes when you were a prosecutor for Pulaski County, and obviously we are not crime scene technicians, but what's your take on that?
It's going to be really difficult, if not impossible. I mean, I'm not going to say impossible because I'm not a latent print examiner or crime scene tech, but fingerprints are primarily consist of water, and it also depends on the surface where you leave your print. So a print on, let's say, the surface of a car or glass is going to be may stay longer than on like a rough surface, particularly skin. I've never seen fingerprints from skin. You'd be more likely to get some sort of touch DNA, depending on the condition that they found the leg in. You know, was there any clothing or anything? We don't know the answer to that. Clothing would probably be more likely to retain any sort of touch DNA or skin cells from someone who she had contact with. But fingerprints, I would say probably not.
For folks just joining us here tonight, we are talking about Shequenia Burnett, a 38-year-old mother of 3 that had gone missing. And again, you can use the comments here on Facebook, Monday Night Mystery, and you can join in our conversation. Megan is letting us know that she's watching Monday Night Mystery tonight using that hashtag there on Facebook. I want to get to a comment, and again, they're not using the hashtag. That's okay. We're still talking about it. Splashy on Facebook asking, when will the DNA from the items found at my sister's apartment result? I'm assuming that we're talking, when we say, you know, my sister, we're talking about Miss Burnett. Latricia Woodruff, law enforcement and a communications expert. Law enforcement, they probably already have those results. They're just not sharing it.
Exactly. It goes back to what KARA said earlier. If they have that information, that's not information that they're going to share, because at this point, I don't believe they've classified this as a homicide at this point, but it very well could be. So you don't want to put out all of this information into the public arena, and then you go to prosecute someone and all of this information is already out there, and it could hinder any type of prosecution. So because you don't see and hear about all of the evidence and the DNA that they've sent off and all those things, does not mean that these cases aren't being worked on. It does not mean that they have stalled out and nothing is happening. They just can't release that information. But I can assure you that these cold cases are being looked at. They are going back to them, especially when we have shows like this where it maybe generates some more information for them to go on. Then they pick right back up and start afresh sometimes because of new information, and it may send them in this direction, it may send them in that direction. I realize before we even came on, that there were people who loved and cared about Miss Burnett. But just looking at the comments here on Facebook, there's so many people who are saying that she was a good neighbor, she was a sweet woman. They're saying, you know, this was my cousin or one of my relatives. And so many people impacted by this, and the not knowing of what to Miss Burnett has got to be hard. But again, this case is being worked on, is still being looked at, and you just have to have that information that gives law enforcement a push in the right direction. I say this all the time. Cases aren't solved, whether they're missing persons cases, homicide cases, any other types of cases are not solved without people. Law enforcement can't do it on their own. You have to have people who are telling you what they know, what they've heard, who are giving you information about this so that you can weed out what's not helpful, but bring in what is helpful and figure out exactly what happened.
Want to, you make a very valid point as to why law enforcement would be holding that information tight to the chest here. And somebody makes a comment here, but that's not closure for the family. So the family suffers with the pain with no information to go on. I go back to what CARA was saying, and law enforcement has to protect the investigation in case there's justice to be sought, right, Latricia?
Exactly, exactly. This is not meant to hurt the family at all. It's really meant to help them, and maybe it's in the long run that this helps them. They want to know every step of the way what is going on in an investigation, but that's just not possible, because if there is a trial that's going to be ahead, if someone is accused of killing her, any foul play involved, they have to protect the integrity of that case so that the family, so that the victim can have some justice. It's hard, you know, it's hard. If I were in their shoes, I would want to know exactly what's happening. I would want someone calling me every day, giving me updates, or me calling them every week, finding out, okay, now we've talked to this person, now we've gotten this, and this is what it's yielded. But that's just not possible. But please know that they are working these cases, and when they're keeping information from you, it's for the good and the integrity of this case.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Kelly, before we wrap up tonight, the big headline here, friends missing. This is not just about Shequenia. There's also another woman missing that has close ties to her. And you see her photo there on the left-hand side. That's Miss Wallace.
Yes,
you've been diving into this a little bit.
We'll be talking about her next week. She went missing, or she was reported missing, or last seen, I should say. She was last seen on January 10th, which was the day after Miss Burnett was last seen, and they were lifelong friends. We'll talk about. They had been talking, communicating in the days before they both disappeared, and she left behind children as well. So it's a very interesting and also very concerning storyline that will continue next week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Part 2 of Friends Missing airs and will be streaming live right here on the device that you're watching next Monday, same place, same time. Latricia Woodruff, Kelly Ward, Cara Boyd, thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you.
That is it for tonight's show. Again, if you have any information about the disappearance of Shequenia Burnett, you are asked to call the North Little Rock Police Department. All tips can remain anonymous, or you could also call your local law enforcement agency. For now, I'm Mitch McCoy. Have a good rest of your night. Be safe, and thanks for watching Monday Night Mystery.